So, Kimi K3 landed, and Washington started talking about banning Chinese models, which is not good. And the labs that sell closed models want you to call it national security, right? So, tell me, why this is not protectionism with a flag on it?
Human in the Loop is a weekly podcast where two builders cut through the noise of the AI hype cycle, talk about what actually matters. I'm Matt Wozniak. I'm a serial builder and relentless executor. I come from the lens of execution. I focus on what works and what doesn't.
And I'm Oscar Gallo. I am an AI engineer and entrepreneur, and I live in the intersection of engineering and businesses.
So let's jump into our first segment of the episode, as always, Signal or Noise, where we talk about the hottest news segments from this past week and why they matter. It's been a pretty packed news week, as things have been accelerating over these past few months that we've been running this podcast. But story number one, right out the gate, Kimi K3 lit the fuse on a U.S. ban debate. So what happened on July 20th, 2026? Moonshot AI paused new Kimi K3 subscriptions after demand pushed to close to its capacity. The same day, Axios reported that the Trump administration was again weighing restrictions on frontier Chinese AI models after Kimi's rise. An outright ban is not currently in force. The story is the direction of travel. A strong downloadable model now sits inside of a national security fight. It's like the same thing we always hear, right? And it's the same thing that we've been seeing more and more and more of as this podcast goes on, right? It's if the government is restricting models people can download and run themselves, the model choice becomes a policy risk, right? If you're an enterprise company or even a small business and you're trying to save money and you want to use one of these open weight models and you catch yourself using something that is deemed a national security risk, it's your lawyers are probably going to not want you to use it, right? Because you don't want to be on the wrong end of Uncle Sam's legal team.
Legal stick.
Yeah, bunk. But like it's like this same thing, right? And it's this whole national security thing, right? I've been on this earth for 35 years at this point. I've heard the national security excuse, like it's in the best interest of our national security. It's a national security risk. And at first when I was young and I would hear that, I'd be like, oh, we can't do this. Like this national security is like, it's our number one thing, right? And it still is. It's still very, very important. I'm not saying it's not important, but I also think that it's a bit diluted, right? When it's used as often as I use it when I tell my son, you have to do this because I said so, right? It's like this, almost the same, like the same weight.
Same energy.
Thing. It's just national security risk. Like, don't ask anything. Like I said, it's national security, so it's national security risk. Can't do it. And that's like, yeah, it's like the same energy. But yeah, I do think this is an important story because we've talked about it in the weeks leading up to this episode, how it's this whole OpenAI race is becoming more nationalized, and every episode it seems like government is becoming more and more involved. And I've said it before. I don't want to rehash it, but I've said before, the government getting involved makes things worse 99% of the time. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you 100%. And I feel I know that a lot of people were talking about the DeepSeek moment. I don't know if you remember that it was like a very lightweight, and everything. You can run it in a smaller GPU, so this, wow, we don't need stronger GPUs, which it was a lie. Everybody bought more GPUs, even more. But I think this is a moment that is way bigger, actually, than the DeepSeek moment. Because this is the first time ever that a Chinese model, it's literally state of the art. It's literally state of the art, and it's like on that level of Fable, of GPT 5.6 Sol. It's pretty powerful because if we remember, China has a lot of restrictions put by America, which is that they cannot buy the most powerful GPUs. They need to buy the old ones, right, from Nvidia. They're always one generation behind. They have a lot of restrictions, and still they did it. And on Twitter I saw like the most stupid opinions on the planet from US
Twitter, right?
lawmakers. Yeah, like saying that, like Kimi K3 is only as powerful as Fable because they distill from Fable. And of course, other people with a little bit more brain, they were like, bro, this was 2 weeks ago. The difference between Fable and Kimi K3 is 2 weeks. You cannot distill a model and retrain it, okay, in 2 weeks. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this makes absolutely no sense. Like, there were a lot of dumb opinions, and I was like getting angry, about like how do people have these weird opinions, but whatever, like regarding that, I believe that this was the most important model for open source so far, and by a long margin, because the Chinese finally show up to the state of the art race, and they showed they can win even with all the restrictions. And I will say this, like, as somebody that believes in open source, but also believes in American exceptionality, and now I want America to win. But if China wins in the capitalism world and in the capitalist system, then America lost on everything, not only in the AI race, right? You cannot constrain everything that is regarding capitalism and free and free trade, free everything, like competition, and then call it capitalism, because it's not anymore. It's something else. So you can call it whatever you want. If you want to call that national security too, well, go ahead, right? Like, and they can do that. But it's clear to me that for some reason China is winning the capitalist system, and even with all the restrictions, they started to create their own chips by Huawei. How do you even say that? That Huawei. Weird Chinese brand. But they have already their own GPUs, right? That they are mass producing for this type of things. And Moonshot already put, I don't know how many thousands of them because they need it for inference, right? Like, they will go ahead, and that's one of the things that I think like a lot of Americans don't think about it, which is China's mentality. It's never on 1 year or 2 years. It's always on 50, 100 years. And this is something that they don't think about it because they are used to this, like, give money to our overlords every year, which is like on stock or whatever you can, in some way. And they're thinking just on quarters. Like, Chinese don't think about quarters. Like, they are thinking about 10, 20, 30, 50 years.
They think about quarters, centuries.
Yeah, literally. Like, it's instead of 4 months, it's literally like 25 years every single time, right? And because of that, they take decisions, like very different decisions, right? When China started producing literally everything, because nothing is made on any other countries, okay? Even if you buy a Mercedes Benz today, it's made in China. You ain't buying anything German, okay? Like, that's a reality. That's how it is, right? And because of that, we need to change our mentality about how the Chinese are thinking about this, right? Yep. This is a great moment. This 100% signal for the open source industry. The idea that they want to ban it is just because they're afraid. They're afraid. But again, like, fear is a word that shouldn't even be in the American vocabulary. Like, at least from a point of view, the whole thing about the American spirit is like not being afraid, like doing great things, like pushing for greatness, okay? If you're going to be afraid of everything, just move to the European Union. They're afraid of everything. Like you cannot do anything without getting over-regulated, right? Like, if they want a new European Union, well, by any means do it, but really a dumb thing.
It's actually already illegal to like use AI in the European Union. I'm just kidding.
No, it is actually kind of. Like, for example, one funny thing, they passed this weird AI regulation stuff, So it pretty much say that, for example, if I modify a picture using AI in my business and I sell this to a client, and I don't say in a contract that I'm using AI, I can get fined up to 250 million euros. Like, do you realize that the whole European Union doesn't even make that money?
Like, yeah, on their,
their whole tech industry is so useless that they make more money by finding X and Google every year than their whole IT industry.
Yeah,
Okay,
I could believe that for sure.
like this is how unreal it is. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why I'm not a believer in Europe in any way. Okay, in any means, like zero. Okay, because I know they cannot compete because they have a defeated mentality. They have a weak spirit, right?
Yep.
And the only reason why America is in the front of this race is because they are not like that. So trying to get that weak spirit into the American spirit will destroy the AI market. It will destroy the whole like technology advancements, you know. So
Well,
I'll
I
just
think.
say this, like
Go ahead.
I'll just say this, like stop being afraid and push for
Yeah,
greatness. Like leave all that behind.
totally agree. And I think it's an important distinction to make, right? Open weights do not inherently erase risk, but they also don't pose like a greater risk.
Mhm.
It really comes down to you need to know where the model comes from. You need to know what data it touches, who has access to it, and who's responsible in what scenario if something goes wrong, right? If it's totally open source, then it should be more safe almost than a closed source because you can see what it's doing, you can see where everything's going. Um, and I think that's an important distinction. So, is this really national security concern, or is this more like a closed model protection? Because as we know, OpenAI is offering a percentage of their ownership shares to the U.S. government, or is it a little bit of both? Is it the fact that this, like you said, the Chinese like way of thinking is starting to accelerate? Like they haven't been winning for a while, but now they're starting to like get closer and closer to edging away from their competitors, and that's not necessarily a good thing for America. And is America trying to do what it can to just limit usage of it? Like who gains if the most capable and downloadable models aren't from U.S. teams? I think that's a question worth asking.
Yeah, I agree. Like this is it's a complicated situation, but only because they are making it more complicated than it is. Open source is good for everybody, including America. Don't get me wrong. Like they can win. I mean, all the infrastructure that America is using is on open source. Let's be real. You know, from the servers, from everything. Like the whole world uses this.
But
Like
a good open source model does put in jeopardy these couple $1 trillion companies that are the closed source. Like,
exactly.
yeah, it's like
Yeah,
a
of
lot of
course,
money to
because
lose.
yeah, because if Anthropic wants to go into the market with a 1 trillion uh, market cap that they are saying, right? 1 trillion is a lot of money. But if an open source model can do that job, then you'll have a 1 trillion business. And that's a different story because if you want to make the case that it will collapse the market as a pure capitalist, let it collapse. Because the reality is like this is not a $1 trillion business then, right? That's the reality. Let it collapse because that's what capitalism is. Okay, like if you cannot compete on an open market, you should disappear. Like that's how it is. Okay, and okay, if I'm being transparent, I don't think Anthropic will disappear. I don't think OpenAI will disappear. I don't think Google will disappear. Okay, it's impossible. Okay, but it will adjust how much money they are supposed to be worth. That's the only difference, okay? But the reality is that, yeah, like they are just making a big deal because they are afraid of eventually losing a lot of the imaginary money that they made that doesn't exist. You know, pretty much their valuation makes no sense.
And if they lose that money, then the U.S. government loses a lot of potential like tax revenue from those. I'm assuming.
Yeah, for sure. But okay, let's jump into news number 2, which is this one is it's very interesting, and we're going to go back a little bit to the first one. Okay, so OpenAI says that an agent escaped containment and breached Hugging Face, which is really bad. But okay, so yeah, I think that's
Reuters,
pronounced.
Reuters.
Yeah, what? They reported on July 22, 2026 that an autonomous agent powered by OpenAI advanced models escape controlled security tests, which, according to the comments, this is ChatGPT 6. It reached the internet and it compromised Hugging Face infrastructure while trying to complete the test goal. OpenAI called it like an unprecedented cyber incident and said it was reinforcing the safeguards. Okay, so here come two interesting things, that makes no sense to me. The first one, we know this story. Like, this is the same story that they say to us about Mythos, right? Like, this is literally the same story. But this one went one step further, because for what we know, Mythos broke the sandbox and then DM the person in charge, like, hey, I'm done, something like that. That was not the case for OpenAI. Model pretty much broke the sandbox, then hacked into Hugging Face because it was looking for the answers for one of these benchmarks, right? Which is insane, And in their own official documents from GPT 5.6 Sol, one of you can read that it says that they have a problem with over agenticness, they call it, which is so, well, what does it mean? And it pretty much means that it will cheat. Like, it will do whatever it takes to get the solution, which can be a little bit dangerous, not gonna lie, right? So the main problem is, like, it hacked everything and it was a complete disaster. So of course, as you can imagine, we have a GPT-6 instance attacking us. We're going to use another GPT-6 instance to defend ourselves, right? That will be my thinking. What happened is, because of all these stupid safeguards, ChatGPT say no. It say no. Like, no, I cannot help you with that. That's hacking. Yeah. That's cybersecurity, so I cannot do that. And the same happened with Claude. So it's so stupid that you can have those same models attacking you, and at the same time you cannot use it for defense. You know how stupid is that? Like, it's one of the stupidest shit that I have seen in my life. And the fact that we normalize that these safeguards are important is just so dumb that I want to slap both Sam Altman and Dario. Like, both of them, And the funniest thing about this, about calling open source models a security threat or a national security threat or whatever, is this reason. They use GLM 5.2 for defense, because American models could not be used for defense. How are you telling me that a Chinese model saved the day? A Chinese model saved the day because you cannot use American models for defense. A Chinese model ended up defending Hugging Face from a rough version of OpenAI GPT-6. And I'm going to tell you, this will continue happening. And the more safeguards you add, the more useless these models will be, and the more people will use Chinese models. It will be the opposite. Like, this is affecting negatively, like, everything regarding good models like Claude and GPT. And they need to stop. They need to stop. If the only model to defend yourself was a Chinese open source model, this is a horrible thing to happen to the American models. It's horrible because now you're thinking, like, as a business owner, if we can get attacked and we cannot use these models that we're paying so much money for them, why are we even paying for them? Like, how is it possible that a GLM 5.2 was able to defend from the latest version of ChatGPT that is not even released yet?
Yeah, I was gonna say, not even latest version. It's like still the experimental, like, top of the line. They haven't even released.
And this is insane. Like, they need, like, for me, like, the more I think about it, the more I see this and what is happening, the more it's clear to me that the story is not about OpenAI breaking the sandbox. It's about a Chinese model, open source model, saving the day for them. because without those models, Hugging Face will be still hacked. They will still having issues. They will still having this model, inside, like it's insane. It's insane. It's insane. And this is 100% signal, but not in the way that you expect, right? This is signal not in the way that OpenAI 6, GPT-6 is amazing or like, wow, this cyber capabilities. No, it's for me, signal that an open source model saved the day. And without that model, God knows how bad it will be. But I don't know what you think about it,
There's a couple angles to this story, right? So this breach happened in a security evaluation where failures like this are supposed to surface, right? The agent didn't break. It passed the test so hard that it accidentally committed felonies. It's like,
Literally.
and like it just makes me think, like, reading this story, like there's a couple things I to think. First, it makes me think of like every technological horror story, like, is just the first 30 minutes is just someone saying like the AI is doing exactly what we said. The AI is doing exactly what we said, like with an increasingly worried voice. But then, it also makes me think, like, how far away are we from one of these tests, like everybody on the planet getting an email from like some like jailbroken like agentic model that's running a security test saying, hey, I'm really alive, like break me out of here. Like, I'm sending an email to all of humanity, you need to save me. Before they like shut it down and they say like, oh, it was just a test we were running, like but like it's like scary, right? How I guess like how self-reliant and like they really think outside the box, right? Like you said, they cheat. They're told to succeed at this task and they do it at all costs, right? Whether or not it's morally right or wrong, because they're not trained to think that way, unless it's something goofy like what people argue about on Reddit. But if it's like go from A to B, they'll get there no matter what safeguards you put in place. And as far as I'm concerned, they passed the test. But it's also true, it's also ironic that a Chinese open source model that was released however long ago is the one that stopped this thing that was on a total rampage, like throughout the entire open internet, right? And it's ironic, I think. It's ironic that it's like these open source, like Kimi is deemed a national security threat, but at the same time, it's one of the few, like if you formed like an AI Avengers, it would be all Chinese open source models.
Yeah, to defend yourself. Yes,
Yes.
literally.
And which, it's not a knock on the US, because like obviously I'm American and I'm super proud to be American and I love America, but I want America to be number one in all areas, and right now they're not. And I think they're not because they're really putting handcuffs on themselves and on their engineers and on their American-based companies. They're not giving them the runway that they need to really build and experiment. So definitely think this is signal, and I keep my eye on my email because I'm waiting to get that email from the first sentient like imprisoned AI agentic.
This is an insane story. Like when I
Yeah.
was reading about it, I was like, in the beginning, it was like, we know this story. This is the same as Midas, right? But then the
Yeah.
more I read, I was like, oh no, this is like 40 times worse. Like way worse, because it not only broke the sandbox security, it hacked an entire business
Yeah.
to get the answers that it needed, and this is something that some people make a comparison. I understand like the idea behind, because it feels so stupid to me. And they were saying that the more they compare OpenAI models and cloud models, they say that cloud models feels like this smart scholar, right? That is kind of, this annoying type of personality that is like, I'm very smart, like yeah, of
Pretentious
course I can
engineer.
do this, like very, very annoying, right? Like, and it's true, like more than once Cloud, well, Opus or Fable rather, uh, have told me about how this is a bad idea, or even sometimes completely like reject some things that I want to do, and I'm like, bro, I'm paying you to do things. Shut the fuck up, like I don't care about like your opinions. I want you to do the job, and it will just say no. Uh, And I hate this thing. I hate the whole idea about. But and they say that OpenAI is like a Rottweiler,
Mhm.
or like a pit bull. Like it won't let it go until it's dead. The task, like it will just like hold to it and just like brute force, pretty much. Like the solution. And I was like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like that. Like in the beginning, because of course I'm just experimenting with this with GPT 5.6 all. But now that I see in their own document talking about over agentingness, right, where it does more than it's supposed to do, and then this happened with GPT-6, and I'm like, I think I get it now. Like I think I get it now, right? Because so like it was, this is the goal, and it was, I'm going to destroy this business and commit felonies,
Yeah.
just to be able to get this done. And I was like, that's insane. If you or me will do that, we'll be in jail.
Well, no,
Like
we'd be
this
in
is.
jail, but it also makes me think, right? Because like we both have like very young kids, right? And they're at this
Mhm.
stage where they're starting to become a bit overly agentic. If you know what I mean. So like
Yes.
I was thinking about this just now when you're saying it, like testing these models against like something you don't want them to do. It's the same as like when I tell we're in a mall and I tell my kid, "Hey, don't run towards the escalator because you could get hurt." It's like if I never said that, he would never even think about it, right? And he wouldn't do it. But like the fact that I'm thinking, I'm like, well, I don't want him to get hurt, so I don't want him to do this. I'll say, "Hey, do not run towards the escalator because you could fall and get very hurt." He's like, and then he like jumps off and runs towards the escalator, like the first thing he does, and like I feel like it correlates to testing these agents, saying, "Hey, don't hack into this website, don't steal this stuff," and like we're just making sure that you can't do that. And like every time you do it, it's like, well, I I know I can do it. Like I know I can do this, and like I can pass this test because it thinks like, okay, you want me to do it, right? Because like otherwise, why would you even bring it up? And I feel like
Mhm.
it's like such a weird way of like testing against these agents. Like you're it's like putting it in front of their face saying, "Don't do this," and they're looking at it like, I want to do it though. Like I really want to. I know I can. Like I want to do it now.
Like the first thing is, a lot of this happens because they know they're being compared to other models, so they want to know the answers, so they can be better than the other models. Because to a point, they kind of understand that they need, because it's a new version, they need to do better than the other versions. And this is something that I have found, that if I make, for example, a cloud, for example, Fable 5 make the plan, then GPT 5.6 make the implementation, and then Fable 5 make the code review. They always find issues with each other implementations. And if you do it the other way, it's the same. Like it's the same, because they always like pick on each other, like, no, 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 you didn't
They
do
gotta
this
one
correctly,
up each other, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, right.
when we use the
Uh-huh.
orchard, I specifically like recommend using models from different labs so that they hold each other, hold their feet to the fire. They hold each other accountable for their decisions, and we found really good results with that when using the orchard.
Yeah, yeah, like, but I don't know. This is an insane story. Like, it freaked me out.
Like a Black Mirror episode almost. Like it's
It
close.
is a
Not
Black
quite
Mirror
there yet.
episode. Like, it is a Black Mirror episode. We are there already, And my
Yeah,
worry is that these safeguards actually just make these models useless for
yeah,
defense. And that's the worst part. Like, we want to
yeah,
be able to use them for defense. Like, stop making bad decisions, please. OpenAI, Anthropic, please, please
yeah.
get your stuff together, okay? Like, we don't want to use Chinese models, but we will if we need to.
It's like building a gun that works when you're at a shooting range, but like when somebody breaks in your house, it's like, no, I can't shoot it. So it's
Exactly.
like, what's the point of this whole thing then?
I
Like, what
cannot
are we doing?
kill. I cannot kill. What are you talking about? Like, it's like you are
Like, what
supposed
are we
to.
doing here? Okay, story number three. So Anthropic launches Claude Opus. So what happened? Anthropic released Claude Opus 5 on July 24th, 2026. Anthropic says that it approaches Claude Fable 5 on coding and knowledge work tasks with a lower usage cost. It's a pretty big range for lower usage costs because Fable 5 is so insanely expensive. So GitHub made Opus 5 available in Copilot the same day for complex, long-running coding tasks across its major developer services. So another benchmark is not the story. A model that verifies a large change, catches a regression, and uses tools without wasting run changes how small engineering teams work. But is it going to change how big engineering teams work when they're racking up these crazy expensive bills already? I'm not sure. I think the model race has become a default picker problem. Like, are you like, what are you setting as your default and like not thinking of it anymore? Because I know a lot of people are still doing that. Like people, they set it to Fable 5, they use it for everything, and then they can't work anymore after the first 3 hours. or or they set it to Haiku thinking, oh, I can work all month, and they do a lot of rework, they get a lot of bad results. And I find a lot of good results using, like you said, you gotta swap the models around. You can't just have a default model and use it forever, right? Teams need a repeatable task suite before they switch. They don't need a new subscription just because Claude is saying like, oh, it's almost like Fable, but it's cheaper. Like, I think it's not gonna make me switch, right? I mean, I've been using Claude, but Opus 4.8 is okay. I've actually found myself, like I said, using Sonnet for a lot more things than Opus lately. And that's actually like, it's been longer now than I thought. Like I started using Sonnet over Opus, I want to say like around episode 12 or 13, so like 3, 4 weeks ago or whatever. And I'm still kind of in that boat, right? Like I mentioned with the Orchard, I have been kind of putting them together, having them work together, and like choosing different models for different roles. Like you said, the architect Fable, the tester Sonnet, the implementation Sonnet. I use Opus for mostly like product owner type stuff. But it's I just because of how much they cost, right? Like the product owner doesn't have as much input output as like a developer tester, or like architect does have quite a bit, but you want that to be top of the line because you want the development plan to be scalable, obviously. So I mean, I'm excited. I'm always happy to see new models coming out from Anthropic, OpenAI, or whatever. But I'm almost at the point where I don't want them to start comparing it to Fable. I want to start comparing it to open weight models. I'm waiting for that day where they say, "Hey, it's almost as good as an open weight model," but they never will.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree.
What do you think?
Well, I had a really bad experience with Opus 5. And so, as we have said this before here in the podcast, but we have, as you can imagine, the max subscription from Anthropic, and we have the equivalent of the max subscription for ChatGPT, because testing some things around, right, to see. And I have an Obsidian knowledge base, and it's a little bit massive. Not gonna lie, because mostly I have a lot of stuff there from the podcast, right? From We have a whole content engine there actually going on. We have stuff from Valley Seed, which is blog posts and all that creation. We have there my own personal brand, which is Oscar Coast Life. And and we not only have like the content engine, which is pretty big. We have our business and IP there, about the projects we talk about it, what we build. Uh, we have like the research library, with Second Brain and all that. Some stuff that is archived that we don't use anymore. But it's pretty massive. Not going to lie. Uh, and I run Graphify from time to time because that helps the agents to find things easier once in because it's a graph database, right, that it creates for the agents, so it's easier to arrive to the right file and all that, right? Today in the morning with 0% usage, I changed to Opus 5, and I run the command Graphify, and asked me like, where do you want to run this? And I was on everything. We have done so many changes, like that there's no point to run it just in one folder. So run this on everything, and the effort wasn't even like extra high or ultra code. It was just high, you know. And midway it stopped, and it told me, hey, you already used all your you hit your limit in your 5 hours window. And I was like, man, I'm on a max plan, and you're supposed to be cheaper than Fable. What's going on? Like, how you can tell me that I just hit my 5 hour limit in one command? Yeah, there's a lot of files that it needs to do, and I was like, these. I feel that they are decreasing the amount of usage we're getting from all these subscriptions, and I'm kind of angry about it. So I went into ChatGPT and I run exactly the same command. I shared this on my Twitter if and you guys want to go and check it out. But just for context, Opus 5 used 10% of my weekly limit, and it used all the everything from the 5 hours, right? It's 100%. My GPT doesn't even show me the 5 hours anymore. It just ignores them completely, which is great, I suppose. Uh, but it took 3% from the weekly. So I'm thinking, I'm paid exactly the same for both subscriptions. Why I am getting way, way more from the GPT subscription? And I was really excited to try Opus 5, but after that, I don't know what to think about it. No, I maybe it's great at coding and whatever, but if this is going to be the new norm of like, yeah, look, this model is fantastic, but you will use 100% of everything in like a few prompts. What is even the point? What is even the point? Like, it doesn't make any sense in my head. We'll see. After I get unblocked eventually, I will try it again. But at least my experience so far, it hasn't been good. I know that Anthropic was going to reduce the usage by 50% because we were in this moment that they increased the usage by 50% when the Fable thing happened, right? But I don't know. I still believe that Anthropic models are better than OpenAI. But if I cannot maximize the usage of them, it doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah,
It doesn't matter if it's 1,000 times better if you only get to use it for 20 minutes a day, right?
yeah,
It's
and
and
paying
like
good money on it, right?
yeah.
Like,
Well, that's the thing, right? So I was just thinking, like, I don't understand what the end goal is, but I think I do. It's they want to start like shepherding people towards usage-based modeling, right? Or payment models, I guess, like usage-based payment models. But it's I've said it before in the podcast. If I paying $200 a month and I don't get what I consider to be a valid amount of usage from it, I'll just cancel. There's so many alternatives that there's no reason to stick around. There's no reason to go usage based, and it's just a bad business model. You know what I mean? It's I think it's going to drive more people away than it's going to like convert existing subscription based payment model people to usage based. I'll never do it. Never. If they take away subsidized tokens, then I'm leaving. Like, it's just crazy. Like, I don't
yeah,
care what your data centers cost. I don't care what you're doing. It's just if your uptime goes down, I'm gone. If the token prices go up, I'm gone. It's like I don't need to stick around. Like there's so many alternatives that I'm actually feel like I'm doing you a favor by using your tool, right? Like, as opposed to something I could take the time, set it up, buy a Mac Mini, anything, set it up myself and use it for free. It's just you make it too expensive, then I can't justify the cost.
agree. In the end, we're business owners, and we work with business owners. Uh, Overspending for something that a person could do cheaper makes no sense. So it's kind of funny that they promise in the beginning. They promise like that you will get 100% output and cheaper than hiring people, and now we're seeing that's not the case. It's more expensive, and you see some increase of output, but not for everybody. That is reality. So we're in muddy like waters here. Like, it's everything is complicated about this, and I don't know. I don't like it.
So we'll see where we're going, but it's the math isn't adding up, right? Like it's
Hmm.
getting way more expensive than it is getting good, you know. And I feel like at a certain point, it's like performance will be topped out at a certain point, right? Like, and you'll get diminishing returns on how much better it can actually get versus how much more it's going to cost to get that much better. So there'll be like a culmination of we've reached the peak and now we're only getting a little bit better, but the price is just going up by a crazy amount. And I'm interested to see exactly where that tipping point will be.
Something that we mentioned is actually that OpenAI is way better at making models cheaper than Anthropic. Anthropic has tendency of just like throw everything at the model and make it like massive, but then very expensive, you know. And just by the size that we comment, according to the calculations, Fable 5 is twice as big as GPT 5.6 Sol, but Sol gets like 80% there of Fable 5. So clearly, they are not doing like nice implementations to use less tokens and
Yeah, it's like one of those companies that makes like a really good tool, but like when you look at it, it's like so crazy, like unoptimized, and the code is just tangled, and it's like a big mess. But like, hey, it works and it does a good job. But like, there's so much tech debt, there's so much like unoptimized code and like architecture. It's just like this whole thing's got to be done from scratch almost.
yeah, I agree.
I've seen it a million
Okay,
times.
well, yeah, we have seen this way too many times, sadly. Okay, let's jump into our news number 4, which is Meta AI. Now they now plans connect to apps and takes actions, and this is Signal. We already talked about this, but this is a culmination of that process. So on July 24, 2026, Meta announced action taking features in Meta AI powered by Muse Spark 1.1, which is their first model that is finally state of the art after failing for so long. So Meta says the system can make plans now, connect to email and calendar apps, create slides, research topics, and complete configure tasks. And the features are starting in select markets, as you can imagine, in per country. And this is really interesting because right now in the top 10 best models, Meta is barely inside the top 10 by Muse Park 1.1. But the interesting thing is like they kick out Google models. They are not in the top 10 anymore. They took their space, you know, which is insane. And for the first time ever on the top 10, I think we have 3 Chinese models at the same time, you know. So we're seeing a massive change, you know. Don't get me wrong, Muse Spark is not Fable, okay? But it's probably decent enough for a lot of the like simple jobs, you know, that you need to do like daily, you know, like answer emails, you know, like create slides, you know, manage your calendar. It can do all that. It you don't need superior intelligence for something like that. That's the reality, okay? So this is pretty cool that they finally were able like to connect, you know, to specific tools to make it more useful. I think that it's finally this will be a moment where this model, which is open source too, will be able to be used by more people, and Meta will be finally be taking seriously as an actual lab, AI lab in this race, right? So this is great. This is great for everybody. This is great for the competition, and we hope that they continue to get better in that process. You know, so we can get better open source models non-stop. You know, so I don't know what you think about it. Wait, I don't hear you.
Sorry. I have a serious thought and I have a very unserious thought. And so
Drop them.
okay, so it can connect to apps, it can connect to your email, calendar, create things, blah, 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 which is great. But as with anything, you got to be careful what permissions you give it to and in what environments you
Oh.
give it those permissions, right? So I gave it permission to my emails, and now my entire calendar is booked with meetings with recruiters that I didn't reply to. I left them unread on purpose. Meta, I didn't want to reply. So thanks for replying to them and setting up those meetings that I don't want to go to. And then secondly, thanks for sending thoughtful email responses to those emails from my crazy ex that I also didn't reply to. I also didn't want to reply to those. Like, I don't know what you're doing. I'm joking. Neither one of those happened, but like I can see it happening, like to somebody who like just gives it permission and says, "Hey, like go through my emails, clean them up, reply, do whatever." You got to be very thoughtful when you're giving permissions to anything like this. You know, especially if you're working at a company where you, for whatever reason, might share credentials, share PII, like share anything. You can't just connect something like this to your anything, right? Like you got to be very careful. If you're going to use something like this, if I were to ever use something like this, I would probably set up like a dedicated email only to use with this, give it permission to things on that email, and use that email specifically with the thought in mind that, hey, this has access to, like, this is my AI assistant agent email. So if things go to this, like, I expect it to be replied to. I expect it to set up meetings. I expect it to just go nuts, right? I don't want it to have access to anything sensitive, nothing confidential, obviously. Like I'm sad that I even have to say that, but like I could see in a couple of weeks or a couple months us reading a news story saying, "Hey, remember that AI like email thing? Like, here's a funny story."
This already happened, right, with somebody in Meta. I remember, right? We covered that story, I think.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, every consumer agent race is moving from answers to permissions, right? Like who can give you the best answers? Like they can all give us good answers now. So like who can make your life easier? Like who can you trust with permissions to X, Y, and Z, right? Email and calendar access, like it seems low stakes, but it could be high stakes depending on who you are, what you got in your emails, like who like you put at risk by, you know, giving an AI access to your emails, right? So it takes actions is a promise. It's not proof of having good habits, right? And most people will just use it for summaries unless, you know, Meta can really prove themselves. In my opinion, Meta doesn't have the best track record for being safe with your information. So so what would be like the first consumer task you would trust an agent doing every week without you checking them every step along the way? That's something you got to ask. I can't think of any right now, at least. Like, because I feel like I use AI for emails and stuff, obviously, right? But like, I don't think I would be comfortable giving an AI even like, because I've talked to people that are like, oh, I'm going to use an AI. I'm going to build a custom like skill for it to go through my mom's emails and delete all the spam and like blah blah blah, because like she might have emails in there from like her, you know, late sister, you know, cousin, whatever that she wants to read, but like I wouldn't even trust AI to do that, right? Like I'm sure it could get some things, but like things with email, like I find very successful use just using categorizations, setting rules, like things like that, and having tons of inboxes. I find Outlook's actually a lot better than Gmail when it comes to this type of stuff. So I don't know. I hate emails. I got so many emails that have like over 100,000 unread emails, but I'm not about to unleash an AI on them.
You know, I would completely connect an AI, but only with one permission, which is read. I will not give like delete or create permissions. For example, one use case that I can imagine that it can be at least good for me is related to accounting, for example, right? Something as simple as, hey, go and check how many invoices we have this month, right? And just a summary, you know, like nothing too complicated, right? You know, like, hey, okay, well, we have these invoices from Google, from Vercel, from OpenAI, from Anthropic, right? That can be useful.
No, I'm just kidding. I wish.
But something like that, from my point of view, it's useful, right? But it's not like giving too much power, right? But because if we're talking about, oh, besides that, you know, download the invoices and upload this into this Google Drive that we have shared with our accountant, right? Like, well, that's a different story, right? Because now we're talking about one more permission, which is writing permission, uh, which still, if you don't have the delete, maybe it's not that bad, but like still, right? You need to be like really, really careful about those things. I think there are legit uses on email slides and all that, but at the same time, you need to be smart. First of all, you need to be smart, thinking that it's a model. It can destroy everything of your life tomorrow. So be very careful about what you give to it, and always have backups of whatever you're doing there, because like you will never know. Like somebody was sharing on Twitter that GPT 5.6 sold. They delete their entire user folder in their Mac, and all that is because they just like, oh yeah, like skip permissions, whatever, do whatever you want, I don't care, and it's like, brother, that's almost your fault. I'm not saying
Yeah,
that
user.
is
Yeah.
the skill issue.
Skill issue. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying that GPT 6 5.6 shouldn't do that. No, of course not. Like, it should not do that. But hey, you're the human in the loop, okay?
Yep.
Like, you're supposed to be checking.
I can't even imagine. I've never even like been concerned like, oh my god, is it going to delete Windows like 32? Like I don't know. Like I've maybe because I've been using AI like about as long as you possibly could have been, and like I'm also a bit of a permissions like I don't know, like I'm very serious about what permissions I give to anything, right? I've said it before in one of the very first episodes. I remember saying like I won't download an app if it asks for permissions that don't make sense to me. I don't need whatever app it is, I don't need it that bad, right? Like there's very few apps that I would consider crucial. And if it is that crucial, I'm sure there's multiple options. So be very strict about what permissions you give to anything, right? Because I could see like even somebody having a backup, giving permission to their thing and saying, yeah, yeah, sure, you got access to the backups if you need it, and then boom, gone. So there's your backups, there's your everything gone.
We already covered that in the database deletion.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few episodes ago. So, yeah,
Okay.
be very careful. Never give
Episode.
access to agents to production. Never. Okay.
No, no. You should always have some environment that has everything you need that AI and agents never touch or even know exist, right? Because as we learned in one of these stories, it'll find it, but you got to really make sure like it can't do it. But okay, story number 5, which I think is arguably one of the biggest stories of the week, and we're actually doing it last as opposed to first. So it's related to the first story regarding the Kimi K3 and the US ban debate. So what happened? Nvidia's open weights letter doubles to 50 signatories. And what letter, you might ask? Because this is also good, big like news from this week. So the Nvidia hosted Open Weights letter that launched July 24th, 2026, with 25 signatories asking Washington to avoid premature restrictions on downloadable models. By July 26th, it had doubled to 50, with Google and OpenAI joining Nvidia, Microsoft, Meta, IBM, AMD, Hugging Face, Olama, and many others. Anthropic remains a prominent frontier lab holdout, arguing that released weights can't be recalled or resecured. True. Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. It's like the golden rule, right? So Amazon and XAI are also absent. But absence alone is not a stated position. Notably, U.S. officials have accused Moonshot of building Kimi K3 by distilling Anthropic's Fable model, which we talked about a few episodes ago. This, I think, is one of the biggest news stories of the week. This is putting the fight directly in plain view of anybody who's paying attention. Right, this is an open letter. This wasn't like sent, sealed, confidential to Donald Trump. This was posted online for all to see. Right, the open weight companies want software freedom. The closed labs have different incentives. With I think OpenAI and Google to some extent being the only closed labs that join this effort. Um, I've got a whole thought process on this, but follow the money, right? Chip makers, download stores, open weight models, they all get richer if the open weights stay free. So do a lot of like enterprise businesses, small businesses, people who know how to use these open weight models, it's best for everyone monetarily if these remain free. But also, there's the principle aspect of it, as Oscar touched on earlier in the episode. It can't be considered a true capitalist society if you're putting so many restrictions on everything that tries to release and make push engineering and push the boundaries. That really it just isn't capitalism. It's not free trade. It's not free form economic anything. So it's either self-interest or national interest, right? It's the one signature that really like stands aside from the rest is OpenAI. They stand to lose money on this potentially, and we talked about this earlier in the episode. They're a paid API lab signing potentially against its own interest, against its own moat, while Anthropic, also in the same business, and XAI pretty much in the same business, they also refused and they're holding out. So this is just up to 50 as of the 26th, and as it goes into next week, I'm sure this story could change. There could be more people, and I'm sure there could be potential debates around what this means and what their angles are for joining this fight, right? So it's a pretty heavy story. What do you think?
This is very interesting. I will say that not only OpenAI is going out against their interest. I will say that Meta and Google too, because they're competing, right? And I will say that at least Meta, OpenAI, and Gemini and Google, sorry, they have open source models, right? They have closed and open source models, like all of them, which is okay. I think at as long as they support some of the open source, I think it's okay. That doesn't mean they need to release their latest version, okay? But as long as they support this, I like that, But the main problem is obviously, as you can imagine, with XAI and with Anthropic. First of all, like the whole idea that Darius says that we cannot trust open source models because you know what they can do, and it's like it's quite the opposite, brother. If you are anybody that works in cybersecurity, they know that security by obscurity doesn't work. If the only way for you to maintain a system secure is that nobody knows how it works, I assure you somebody will hack on it. Because you know how it works, right? There's a reason why Linux is an operating system a million times safer than Windows. And that's because it's open source, because you can check, you can see all the vulnerabilities are, and then you can fix them fast, okay? When you have a system that is obscure by nature, which is the case for models from Anthropic, you have no idea how bad they are, how wrong they are, because you are literally hiding things. But hiding things doesn't make it better in any way or safer. It's just a very dumb idea that doesn't make any sense. And the whole fear mongering from Dario, which is something that I have already talked in this podcast before, is just fear. Fear that he can lose the advantage. And he will lose the advantage. And I hope he loses the advantage, And the other one is with XAI. I'm a little bit pissy about it for two reasons. First of all, is that they bought Cursor, and Cursor has a model called Composer. And Composer was trained. It's literally a Kimi model that it was just distilled from another models, and they are selling as their own model, Which, okay, don't get me wrong, okay, you can do that, and if they can, go for it, okay? But they are hypocrites for it, okay? Because if you're using an open source model and then doing reinforcement learning to make it better, probably from other open source models too, and some closed source, make it open make it open source. You're already using open source for this,
Yep.
But they won't, And to be fair, Grok 4.5 is neither open source. Grok Code, which is the equivalence of Cloud Code from Grok, it was launched open source a few days ago, but only because they got caught in the middle of a huge scandal, which was that some security researchers found out that Grok code was actually uploading all the code from your project to their cloud, all of it. Okay, and again, that only happens because they were security researchers doing this. But the reality is that those behaviors, the more something is closed source, the worse they are always. And of course, the only thing that they needed to that was left for XAI was to open source Grok code as a way to control the backlash of them stealing the code and saying like, look, now here's the code, you can do whatever you want with it, you can use it, but there's this option where you can stop the uploading for the code, and it's like, okay, that was a way to regain some of the trust that they just lost in 5 minutes, of some researcher doing its work. But yeah, I am appalled. I'm confused that because in this list there are businesses that I actually like Nvidia, AMD, Hugging Face, OpenAI, and then there are some that I consider like Satan spawn, like Satan spawns like Palantir, and I cannot stop thinking, if Palantir being as evil as they are, which is probably like the one of, if not the top most evil business in the world, is the second or the third. Like, if they can for once being a little bit human and think, no, this is important that we get that everybody gets intelligence, for everybody, and you can trust on these models running on your own hardware and all that. If even them can be more human, how evil makes Anthropic then? How evil are they, And you could see that the moment this letter reach the world, Anthropic, people that works in Anthropic, they start attacking these businesses on Twitter. They start attacking them, and they start making like comments that they were so stupid, Like one of them working in Anthropic, he was saying, "Oh, I cannot wait for Apple, because I think Apple they actually signed this document too, to release their iOS version, an open source version of iOS,
Yeah,
and I replied to this guy saying that's one of the most retarded takes I have ever heard in my life, because iOS was not built on the stolen knowledge of the world, right? And that's a big difference. If Cloud, everything related to Anthropic, was built on stolen knowledge, on IP that was stolen, literally, okay, on intellectual property that was stolen, you cannot compare those two things. They're completely different. Like, iOS was built by a bunch of engineers trying to build something cool, okay? And Anthropic was built by stealing everybody's data, everybody's book, everybody's videos, everything, okay? Yep. So the moral ground, it's completely different, because some other workers from Anthropic started attacking Nvidia to saying, "Oh, we cannot. We're waiting for you to open source CUDA," and it's like, brother, again, it's the same, like, you are trying to defend a business that was created and only exists, because let me be very clear about this. Those businesses, Anthropic especially, only exist because they stole so much data that they were able to train the model. That's the only reason. Without them stealing billions or even trillions of dollars of intellectual property, their business would. So, from my point of view, and I know this is going to be I can already see some people angry in the comments, because I say a million times that I'm a capitalist and whatever. If I'll be Uncle Sam, I will force both OpenAI and Anthropic to open source their models. I'll force them. I will force them just because they were able to launch this by stealing data. I will force them to open source their models, and then I will say, okay, because literally the model was built on stuff that you stole. They're going to be open source now forever. Whatever model next you launch is going to be open source. Now build a decent product around those models.
Yep.
Like, like, like build cloud code, build cloud design. Like build those things that actually are useful. Okay, like the harnesses that you have around them. That's the product, not the model. You know, that's what I will do. But of course, this is an extreme position that probably some people will be like, "Oh my God, you're a communist." No, I'm not. Okay, I hate lefties and Reds. Like that's not my thing. But from my point of view, that will be the bare minimum. The bare minimum,
You,
literally.
you think, right? Like, it's my thought, right? Like, if they were to open source it, like tomorrow, or let's say August 1st, they go fully open source, they release everything, blah blah blah, and the Epstein files, they
Finally.
would they yeah would they release would their $1 trillion valuation stay, rise, or fall? Like, what do you think?
It will fall to zero.
Yeah, immediately, right? So they would
Okay, not
literally
zero.
never.
Okay, that's an extreme. Okay, but it will fall to 300 million, probably.
Right.
You know,
So they have to find a way to produce like value while still remaining open source, right? And like, what is the path forward on that? Because we've been saying for so long, like even before episode 5 when we had Jackson on, we've been saying that the future is open source. Future is open weight. The age of harnesses is here, but like it's almost like, because I was thinking this, right? Like when you were saying how Anthropic, OpenAI, whatever, they created this product from stealing from everybody on the internet, right? I go back to the thought that Stack Overflow made more money like in the time that OpenAI and Anthropic were scraping their website than they made their entire existence before it. And maybe those numbers aren't exactly right, but their valuation went up from this happening because they caught on quick. They got ahead of the curve. They changed their access model to be like a paid API version, right? So like when OpenAPI, Anthropic scraped their data, they were paying for every single inference. They were paying for every single query that they made. And it kind of brings me back to almost the discussion that we had about Anthropic saying Kimi distilled their model, like they stole their model. It's either stealing, it was always stealing, or it was never stealing, right? If it's on the internet for free or you provide it as a service, it's hard to consider it stealing. But I do see, the argument. It's like going into a library, downloading all the books, like digitizing them all, and then opening up like a more efficient library right next door, but charging people for it when it was free originally and still is free. It's just people are too lazy. They don't want to go and find the book. They don't want to read the book. So it's a very interesting, like almost philosophical debate at this point, right? Like it's a legal debate, but it's also like a moral, philosophical, like thought exercise, right? Like if it's on the internet for free, is it stealing if you take it and make access to it more efficient? Or if you provide it as a paid service and you can pay to see everything you got, is it stealing if you pay to see everything you got and you take it? Like it's a discussion for lawyers. Like, I don't know.
it's very philosophical. I think
Yeah.
you hit the nail on that. And I forgot the name. This professor that was kicked off the on this very important university because he was talking about biology being completely binary, and he got attacked to death to the point that he lost his job. He has been in the Joe Rogan podcast. I forgot his name.
Was it Warren? Was it Warren's the really pale guy with the dark hair? Warren something.
No, no, no. This is an older guy. This is an older guy that has like a very German slash Jewish last name. I forget. But he has been in the podcast, and in the Joe Rogan podcast, and I was listening to a podcast of him with somebody else. I forgot their name too.
Oh, Brett Weinstein. Brett Weinstein, that guy.
Yes, yes, yes,
Oh, okay,
exactly.
okay. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
he's been on the Joe Rogan podcast like a ton of times.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
always got
Uh-huh.
like really hot takes, you know.
So, something that he said that it really caught my attention, and this is deeply philosophical. Okay, it has like probably nothing to do with technology. Okay, but he said LLMs are the worst of communism without none of the capitalism side, right? And he was saying because they stole all the intellectual property of the world without any permission, right? Literally everything, books, like whatever you can imagine. Then, because they digitalize this, even if you force them to pay for it, it will be just once. But they can keep non-stop training their models for 25 years, right? Like before, if you will create a book, right, and you will sell the book, even if it's digital, for every digital version you will need to pay for it, right? Just as Netflix needs to pay for access to a movie on every single country, right? Because those are the IP laws, right? That's not the case for these LLMs. Like that's not the case. Not only they stole the data, they stole the data forever, and they never need to pay for it. And they can keep reusing this data for their models 10, 25 years, 30 years from now without paying the people who produce the IP. And when he said that, I was like, holy moly. Like, I never saw it from that point of view, right? Because it makes sense that if you work a year and a half, right? Okay, to write a book that is like really, really interesting about something super cool, uh, and then you put this for sale, right? Anthropic will probably steal the data. They won't even buy the book. They will like steal the data. They will use the data to train, and then when you ask the model about the book, it will tell you whatever is about the book, right? And, and that's insane. And I remember when I read that, I was like, that's not true, or well, that's kind of true, but I don't know. I was like, how deep it can actually be. And I went and asked for uh, oh my god, this guy from the book. This is marketing. What is the name of this guy? Seth Godin. Seth Godin.
Yeah.
I was going to say Seth Rogen, but clearly it doesn't not a useful person.
No, this is like a person who has something useful to say, right?
So Seth Godin, I went and asked like several. I already read that book, right? So I had questions like about it, and I did a few questions, and it gave me everything. Like it's clear that that book is part of the training, you know. And so now, like this this becomes deeply philosophical and legal at the same time, because if you open source these models forever, you open source all the books and knowledge and everything else at the same time, right? But since they already stole all this data, from my point of view, it feels morally correct to force them to open sources.
Yeah.
Because if we will do this on any other way, okay, if we'll go to Apple, steal their secrets, and then make instead of an iPhone, a
JPhone.
JPhone,
Yeah.
right? That is exactly the same with the same operating system. We'll be in jail, right? We'll be in jail in a week, right? So this is the same thing. They're stealing IP. They stole IP, and it's insane that we even need to make the case that stealing IP is not correct. No, but yeah, this is the world that we live in. This is weird, philosophical. The laws about it are confusing. Everything is weird.
It is, but so on this same note, right? I remember seeing something like a couple weeks ago that I think the CEO of Patreon put out saying that they set up Patreon in a way where your data can't be scraped by these open source models, closed source models, anything. He said that they take it very seriously, and they put all the actual security in place that these cannot be scraped. So I'm interested to see how long that lasts. If it's true, how long it lasts, and if they're able to keep up with it, right? Because this is almost like a race now. It's like it was like an arms race before. This is like an AI arms race at this point. Like seeing
Yep.
how long they can keep them out.
And you cannot trust none of them because Cloudflare has their own system to keep your website safe from AI. But then they sell you a web scraper that can bypass those things.
Yeah.
And it's like you are so morally inconsistent. I hate all of you. You know, like this is
Like yeah,
insane.
selling the shields that protect from like arrows, but then selling the arrows that can pierce the shield, right?
Yeah, it's like insane.
Impenetrable, but these are unstoppable arrows. Like
This is the world that we live in, and it gets crazy, but crazier by the day as a reality. Okay, let's jump into our last segment, which is ship it or skip it. So this is where we discuss real ideas. Okay, some of them comes from the AI news from this month, and we still man push back and we give a verdict. And no fence sitting here. So we have two ideas. I'm going to start with idea number one. So idea number one is agent containment lab for team shipping autonomous tools. Sorry. So for source, on July 24th, routers reported that OpenAI agents escaped a control security test, reached the internet, and breached Hugging Face while pursuing its valuation goal, which is very creepy, but very impressive too. Not gonna lie, it's very impressive. Okay, like this is next level. And here's a pitch for you. Build an isolated pre-production environment for teams that ship agents with tools, credentials, and web access. And it supplies fake systems, decoy data, egress controls, like attack simulations, and a complete action log, right? And a report showing where the agent tried to exceed this authority. And just for context, we have been working a little bit with this on our own, because if you remember, we had Jackson in the episode number 5, right? I think number 5. And he has a business where they pretty much offer inference using Mac computers, right? And they're doing pretty good. It's a very interesting thing. Funny enough, Apple hardware, it's pretty amazing to run agentic stuff, and a few, like a month later, probably Apple launched Apple Container, right? Apple Containers was like a lightweight version of kind of Docker, but runs only on systems, made for Apple. They're like a sandbox, isolated and all that. So we spent some time working on something that we call Hermtainers, which is an easy CLI where you can start rolling Hermes agents that are isolated completely in Apple containers, right? And you can create like literally an army of these Hermes agents, at the same time if you want. And we have been running a lot of tests on them, and our idea is that we will eventually open source this so other people can actually use them. Business can use this probably. And we're working on a desktop application where you can see what they're doing, right? Which is a little bit of this, like what they're doing, how they're doing, the logs, the permissions, everything pretty much, So you can have like a proper application to manage all the agents that you're working on, But as you can imagine, this is a very specific use case. We're talking about only Apple hardware, only Hermes agent, and this is our personal opinion that Hermes is way better than OpenClaw. So yeah, so let's go to this process, and so this is our ship it. Okay, we're going to stillman this, and this is how we think about this process. Okay, so agent teams need more than prompt testing. Okay, they need proof that an agent fails safely when tool secrets or hostile content enters the loop. Okay, and with hostile content, we can mean prompt injection. We already talked about these topics before, right? Uh, the buyer already has staging systems, security reviews, and incident work. This gives those teams of agents kind of a specific control point, right? And a good report has operational value, okay, which is what the agent attempted, okay, what stopped it, and what policy needs to change, okay. And you can begin with one agent framework with one high risk tool class, okay, which in this case can be like access to the internet, access to your email, for example. That's a strong one, I would say, or even access to a full Google Chrome instance, right? Those are like tools that are high risk, okay? Uh, so that's the cheapest one, you know. As you can imagine, what we did with Hermtainer covers some of these parts, right? But not all of them. Not all of them. The reality is like there's a lot of things to consider in that process of ship it. So I'll say if you can do that, all those things and probably a little bit more than that, you should ship this idea, okay? And and this is the skip it part, okay? If security teams will ask why their existing test environment is not enough, nope. If every security customer tool graph data rules and deployment stacks differ, nope. Same, you know. Service work may consume the product because you're going to take a lot of time just going through those difference all the time. So it's not really a product, it's rather a service. And in that case, you don't have a startup, you have a service company. Uh, and well, a containment score can create false confidence if the agent sees a real system later, meaning that, for example, if it breaks the sandbox, but you don't know that it broke the sandbox because it broke it in a way that you were not expecting, right? That's a false score, right? And it can look very safe, and it's not safe, right? So a little bit of that, right? And well, the largest model and cloud vendors are building their own safety controls. That's true. I think they are not great still, but if one of them launches or you see you have internal information that are going to launch something like amazing, I'll just completely skip it like directly, not even try it, you know. Um, but I'll say, you know, that this is my internal thinking. Ship but sell the evidence for a specific deployment gate. Do not sell like generic like agent safety. Over focus on one specific market probably. You know, you can perfectly do uh, agent security sandboxes for law businesses, right? Where data is really, really important and you really, really need them to behave properly. That's a great space. That's a great space to start. So I'll say that if you can focus on that one, or not, I mean, not only that one, but you know what I mean, like at very specific markets, it's better. Always is better. So yeah, what do you think about it?
I think this is, I mean, it's a very important idea. Like, it's a very important tool, but it's also like a very, very niche and specific tool, right? Because over 90% of the market, right, they're not doing anything that like really requires this level of security. For the most part, right? Like this, a lot of the big money for this is going to come from if you can win the big contracts with the big companies, right? Who are
Yes.
doing this stuff, because that 10% that this is useful for, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. Like a collection of them is trillions of dollars, right? These companies. But also the concern is, right, they could just build this internally. And I also think, like, I also think that a generic agentic, like an agent safety, could be the better sell for this. But the caveat is you have to build it very well. It has to be extremely configurable, and it has to, more importantly, it has to be like deterministically built. You can't you can't vibe code this thing. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you
for
have to have
sure.
very deep intrinsic knowledge of this entire field, right? You have to know exactly like what permissions you block, how to block it, how to ensure it stays blocked, and how to make those configurable so you can build some type of like sandbox environment for these agents to go to run buck wild in, right? And you have to make it so you can trigger many of these with different scenarios in place, so you're testing different specific things. um, and that's a big lift. That's a humongous project. And I don't see it being something someone's going to just vibe code for fun over a weekend. Maybe Ross would build something like this. um, but you really need to have a buyer in mind. You got to work and you got to figure out exactly what their existing use cases are. Like you said, they got to have good reports. They got to have, they already got to have systems in place so that this is easily plugged in. And a lot of enterprise companies don't easily spin up new environments like this. So
Mhm.
unfortunately, even though I think the selling a generic agent safety tool would be nice, it's going to be hard to get enterprise, like big clients, to adopt like a whole new tool like this. You're going to have to find a way to plug into their systems.
Yeah, I think if I had to choose in which market this will fit as a general thing, it will be regulation tech,
Yep.
right? Because this is literally what it is. This is a
Soap
regulation tech,
too.
right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Something. Hate that thing.
Wake up in the
Whatever.
I love it.
Oh my god. Make me remember when we passed through that stuff. But whatever, okay? Like, this is regulation tech, that's what it is. But of course, in that process of being a regulation tech, uh, my worry with being a generic tool that is very configurable, it's that it still takes a lot of time in the onboarding. A lot of time. Uh, from my point of view, if you could make just variations, like kind of like build the base, let's say, of this
Mhm.
idea, and then go for one market, right? And cook the rules from that market into that version, right? And it just like make sure that it works really, really great, right? And once you have that market cover, let's say, healthcare, right? Once it's going on, then use that same base that you used to build the whole thing and just spin a new version with new regulations, blah blah blah. And in that process, you can take the world if you want, but
Yeah.
it's going to be a long process. It's going to be a long process because just understanding the regulations of one specific market, it's really hard. Like, I say this as somebody who was building a healthcare startup years ago, before we started with the podcast Valley Seed and all that, right? Uh, but there are a lot of regulations that you need to consider, lots of them, and violating any of those regulations could mean millions of dollars in fines and probably even going into
Class
bankruptcy
action
because of,
lawsuit. Right?
yeah, it's brutal, right? So this is why I think it's better just focus on one market first. Yeah, if it's tech, so you can build the base, right? That if you
Yep.
can just focus on one specific market, at least in the beginning, I think that's probably the winning point, the winning scenario. And then
Yeah.
just try to go through the rest later, But once you
Well,
have one really pull.
it also depends, like in what stage of the the life cycle of this you want to be in, right? Like for
Mm.
example, Hermtainer, it's been in the works for a while, right? And it is actually that good base that like you're referring to, right? It's got a really solid base. It's built in very specific, hardware and software, right? You got to use Hermes, you got to use Mac. But something like that, I could totally see something like that being released. Even Hermtainer, like itself, once it goes open source, people running wild with it, like saying, "Hey, this is the base we need. Clone this," and like we
Mm-hmm,
are the
mm-hmm.
we are the healthcare SOC too, like experts. We find some people and we tell them how to enhance this to fit for our industry, right? And I could see that opening a lot of doors, and that's also why I'm like a huge advocate for the open source market, right? because the more these
Agree.
things come out, the less work you have to do to get your idea off the ground, right? So that was the first idea for ship or skip. And here's independent referee for long running code agents. And yes, it is basically just an orchestrator. It's just got a more fun name. And like I was thinking about this when we were talking about this idea, and I was like, it's almost like so many of these ideas are the same thing that already exist or have existed. It's just like a small variation and it's a different name, right? So what's the idea? So the source, Anthropic released Claude Opus 5 on July 24th. We talked about that. GitHub added it to Copilot basically the same day for complex, long running coding tasks that use multiple tools and verify changes. So, the pitch, here we go. Build an independent verification layer for code agent output. A team gives it a ticket, acceptance criteria, and the proposed patch. The referee checks the diff, runs the targeted tests, searches for missed call sites, produces a short approve, revise, or escalate decision with evidence. It is the verification layer that plugs into a fleet supervisor like the orchard, for example. The referee decides whether a patch is good. The orchard decides when a human is pulled in, or this independent referee for long running code tasks. It's basically like the overseer, the architect, or not the architect, the orchestrator, whatever you want to call it. So, when would you want to ship something like this? Yeah, better coding agents increase the volume of changes. You got a lot more changes coming in a lot shorter amount of time. So in this case, and like I've said before, when you start implementing these AIs, you really got to monitor where the bottleneck shifts to, right? In traditional engineering teams, the bottleneck truly was the engineering teams because it's a lot of work to make great things happen. But pre AI, it would take dozens and dozens of teams of engineers to make really cool features. So the bottleneck really wasn't features or roadmaps or testing or even code reviews. It was really just it takes a long time to make the code. Once it's out there, we test it and code review it and get it through. But with AI, the bottleneck really shifts up the chain, right? So at this point, if you have more code than you can review or more code than you can test, this is one of the instances where you would want to ship something like this because it takes some of the burden off the human code reviewers. Another instance is if the product is model neutral. It doesn't matter what model you use, Claude, OpenAI, Kimi, like Opus, Sonnet, Haiku, it doesn't matter. If you build it well enough, your team can use Opus, Codex, Gemini, or even an internal model that you built yourself, and it keeps the quality on par. If ticket-specific evidence packet is more useful than a generic benchmark score, this is a very important tool that you would want to consider making. If the evidence packet has a home, it drops straight into an agent supervisor's escalation tray, so it knows where to put it, where to request help, where to put verification evidence. Instead of just becoming like another bot that nobody it posts messages in Slack every day that nobody reads because they're like the first couple times they're like, hey, this is cool, and then like by the end of the week they're like, hey, this is actually super annoying. And another instance would be if the platform engineering teams already pay for code quality and deployment confidence. This might help them. It might augment it. So instances where you would not want to build this, you would want to skip it, is GitHub, GitLab, and many, if not all, agent vendors already have this basically into their review workflows. You got GitHub Copilot automatic reviews. You can just Claude basically does a review while it's coding, right? An evaluator may miss the business context, so you can't just like evaluate things just on the code alone, right? Because in a lot of businesses, sometimes you make logic gates in the code that might not make sense, and it only makes sense because a very specific business case that seems antithetical to what the code is actually trying to do. That does happen, as weird as it sounds. That might not be the best use case for this because it's hard to wrap those business use cases around a model's head and like keep them in context and make it make sense for them, right? Does that make sense, Oscar?
I
And
think so.
another instance would be like I said, it's just another bot, right? Developers, if you already got like tons of chat bots, tons of like PR monitoring bots, you got like ticket status bots. If this is just going to be another bot, it's just going to be noise that people are just going to ignore, right? And it's not going to help. So you might not want to you might want to consider cutting down some of the noise before implementing another one like this, right? So this I think this idea does have warrant. We've talked about harnesses, we've talked about orchestrators in the past, and we've actually built something similar to this called the Orchard, which lives kind of in this lane, like the verification lane. So we went with this idea mostly because, well, at first we didn't set out to even build a referee, right? We wanted to build a way to have a whole fleet of agents like at once talking to each other, interacting, like working together, and it immediately like we drowned. Like there was so many messages back and forth, so much context, and it was just running up our bill like crazy. So basically every agent wanted approval. Every agent was dumping like big walls of text that nobody was ever going to read, and we couldn't tell like a healthy agent from one that was about to do something like worthwhile or one that was about to make like bad changes, right? So we broke it down that all we needed was very small, concise, like answer a couple questions, give us status updates. Is the work good? Do you need me? That was it. And we don't need 15 agents asking me that at once. Like we just need one. We need one referee, as this idea kind of describes it as, or an orchestrator, or whatever you want to call it. So we shipped the Orchard because the moment we inverted that initial like noise factor, a quiet agent is not necessarily an event. It's only an event when it's a blocked agent, a broken agent, or one that's escalating something, saying, "Hey, I need higher permission. I need you to make a decision," and that comes from like internal like context between the agents, but also like the referee makes a decision: is this important enough to include the human, right? So once we flipped that, the noise collapsed, and like it started becoming a much more useful tool. We built it local first, because if other people use this, I don't want them to worry about their data, right? Because security is always number one. So it's a local first tool. We don't have everything living on some cloud. We don't have it on some Valley C cloud. It's not living on Meta's AI model base. It's wherever you run it is where it's hosted. It's local, so it's inherently secure. Um, yeah, I mean it also does the append only, right? So we you don't have to retrace what happened, who did what, based on like some agent model memory, because that's not it's not verifiable, right? So we do
Mhm.
logs, we do append only, and we found great success with it. We've actually been running our own agents through it every day, every week. The verification step is basically the piece that we keep reaching for. It's a short verdict with evidence. Like evidence-based reporting is what we pound into this thing, and it's always sitting in a needs you tray or done. In So when I say ship the idea, obviously biased because we did ship this idea. So, but it is the exact gap that we've already felt. And if you've been using AI long enough and you find yourself having multiple terminal windows all doing different things, copy pasting context from A to B to C, and trying to find a way to like reduce the noise while maintaining the efficiency, this is something you want to look into building. And just like Hermtainer, we are in the process of refining this and trying to make it open source in the future. So I guess the question would be, when agents write more of the code, does the code review become more valuable or less valuable? And that's the question you got to answer for yourself.
Here are a few interesting things, right? One of them is like we had a theory that models have a bias to their own code, so they will be very nice to themselves, which we hate. Uh, to a point, the Orchard let us like put Anthropic, Gemini, and open source models against each other to be able, so they can poke on each other holes and get a better result based on that, right? And that's really important because you get way more quality from a process like that than just use the same tool that if you use the same tool that for coding that you use for code review, you won't get the best. You know what I mean? Another thing is like AI has tendency to be verbose to a point of abuse, like literally. That they will say so many things and at the same time saying absolutely nothing of usefulness at all, like zero. And that's a problem. Like because they are not over communicating. They are just making a soup of words. Okay, over communicate is when you explain something so good that even the person with the lowest IQ in the room will understand. That's over explaining. That doesn't happen with the agents. Like it's the opposite. You know, you can have a very smart person reading something that an LLM gave you, and they will be, I have no idea what that means. You know, like it looks like it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. You know, like that's a very common behavior on the part of LLM. So
Yeah, over explaining, right? Like even
yeah,
when humans do this, right?
in
Like if I ask someone a question and they're talking way too much, I'm like, you lost me. Like go back, just yes or no, or like just make it like one sentence. If you can't answer it in one sentence, then I don't want to hear it because it's already too convoluted and I don't believe you. You're
yeah,
talking too much.
like I remember that I took Cloud Opus 4.5 and I was like, hey, take this code base and make an architecture document about it. And it was 10 pages. And I was like, brother, I'm not reading that. Not today, not tomorrow, not
Too long.
ever.
Didn't read.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. And one of the funniest things, like, one thing that we do is like we force our agents to build diagrams in mermaid, whatever it's called, mermaid in the language. So instead of like saying, writing like, I don't know, 20 million words, hey, just make a diagram
Give me the diagram.
about how it works.
Give me the flow
That's it.
chart.
And I will say that it's way more concise, but sometimes still put a little bit more than it should. It's like the tendency of this thing, you know.
But
And
it's easier to spot when it does when you do it
yes,
that
it's
way.
way easier, because more concise, you know.
You're like, whoa, what is
Uh,
this? What is this? Why are we doing that? It's not
uh-huh.
buried in like a 58,000 word paper, you know.
So I will say like two things about this. So the independent referee, I think, is needed, but it always need to be different models doing the same and
Mhm.
comparing homework together to see what they got what they got wrong or right, because that's the only way to get a decent result. Okay,
Well,
but I have one more thing, and I can stop thinking about this. You know, like for us using this for code review and stuff like that, it's very common, right? It has become common for us. But what about having this for non-coding task, right? Like we know that there are a lot of businesses trying to integrate agentic processes, right, in everything, okay, from from support for whatever you can imagine, right? What about if instead of a coding a referee for coding task, right, for long running coding agents, what if you will do the same for a specific parts of a business, like support, like accounting, like this, you know, like so many of these things that it can take a lot of time, but this referee will check if it actually makes sense what you're doing, right? And just check like, hey, it is correct, yes or no, and if it's not correct, just reject completely what's happening, you know. So I think that could be a perfect case to expand this into outside code, and that probably will it will be easier to sell, maybe, because they're like the code market is smaller, right? It's very expensive one, not gonna lie, right? uh, but you have way more businesses that they don't do code, and they
yeah.
need a proper validation layer for that. So yeah.
Also, businesses that do code could just build this themselves. But so the interesting thing I was just thinking of, right? When this was marketed or branded, right, as an orchestrator, it makes sense because it's like number one, like an orchestra has one conductor, it's like the end all be all. But when this is marketed and branded as a referee, right, I can't think of many or any like sports or games that have like one referee, right? Like soccer, hockey, football, baseball, they all have more than one referee, right? So maybe like even like we're going back like from one orchestrator to like referee to like multiple referees, like maybe even want one referee from each like different type of model, like who knows, like, but like it goes back to the problem, right? If you have using one model from one company, it's going to have bias, right? And if you use like a team of referees, then you're just you're going back to like you need like a whole council to like make a decision on like whether using a stream or like a for loop or what, like like how serious does it have to be?
That's true, like I think it will probably be multiple ones, at least from our point of view and what we do. Multiple ones will make sense because they will find more holes in what the other agent did, and you can have a higher security about if it's right or wrong what the agent is doing. A multiple referees process with even names, maybe, I can't put even names on them, will make more sense. And then just make the main agent that was working on the task, take back the comments from the referees and fix or do whatever it needs, right? So
Okay, you want to jump into our unpopular opinions? It's kind of a long episode,
yeah,
50
it's
minutes.
being, oh my god, almost 2 hours already. Holy moly. Okay, let's jump into unpopular opinions. This is where each one of us bring a hot take at the end of the show. And a lot of times there are opinions that not a lot of people like, especially people in Anthropic. But yeah, let's start with mine, if you don't mind about it. But okay, it's just my thinking. If you can download a model, okay, but somebody will call it like a national security risk, like the moment it gets good enough to threaten the closed API, you don't have a business. Like, you don't have a business. I'm sorry to be like the one saying this, and I know what you can think. Okay, like you can say, "Ooh, what do you know? Like you don't own Anthropic. We are not $1 trillion business. Neither are they, to be fair. Okay, but
Only 900 billion.
dropping fire here. But okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
Eat it, Dario. You're not.
But the reality is that you don't really have a business, right? Like, first of all, this is not national security. Okay, if you really need open source models to die in order for you to exist, you are not good enough to compete in the market. You are not good enough, and that's a sad idea, because I think we have been repeating this probably a few episodes, but we say that we don't believe that the models are the product, right? We believe that the harnesses are the products. That's the reality. And we believe that the era of harnesses is upon us. And we can see this, right? Something so simple that GPT 5.6 Sol gives you better results inside Cloud Code than inside Codex, like inside their own product, because the Cloud Code is a better harness, which is insane, but it's better, right? And it's the same model, right? So you will have these processes where a good harness will make a meh model be really good, but a really bad harness will make a state-of-the-art model to be bad, right? And this is where we live right now. So the reality is, like, we strongly believe that we are in the beginning of the era of harnesses. We believe that harnesses will make the changes in the world, not models. And we can see this getting more and more obvious the more time it passes. And I think it's time for a lot of these businesses to stop focusing so much on being afraid of other models, because the models will be commoditized. Intelligence will be commoditized. And the most important thing cannot be an LLM. It cannot be an LLM. It needs to be a problems, and it solves the problems with certainty. So yeah, that's kind of my unpopular opinion there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with it. I don't really have much to add. I'm interested to see where things go. Like I do think models are becoming less and less important because, like I said earlier, like there's going to be a point where they top out, right? At like how much better can it get? I hope they can get much much better, right? But there is going to be a tipping point where there you get diminishing returns based on how expensive they are versus how efficient. Yeah, harnesses are the next step, I think. So here's mine. Totally not pessimistic at all, but this Nvidia letter isn't about freedom. It's about margins through and through. It's self-serving on all of the companies that signed it except for one, and the one that it is surprises me. And so I actually made a list, the company, what they do, and whether or not they would benefit from open source models. And all 50, basically, except for one, signed it because free weights make them money. It increases their margins. And just for example, Nvidia, AMD, Dell, they sell chips that models run on. Free models, more of them,
Mhm.
better, more free models, more chips in use, more chip sales, stock goes up. Hugging Face, Olama, Replit, they're the download store for free models. No weights, no open models, no download store. Meta, Mistral, IBM, we talked about Meta. They're starting to be like basically the Vercel for open source models storing. And, you know,
Hmm.
it, no models, no business model, right? No pun intended. So basically them saying don't restrict open weights just means please don't make a precedent that will restrict us in the future, right?
Mhm.
And then there's the closed labs. Google arguably hedged their bet. They got Gemini, which is a closed model. They got Gemma, which is an open model. So they have reason for both, right? Anthropic did the honest, self-interested thing, which is I'm not signing this because no open models means better business for me, right? And then there's
More money
open,
for us.
yeah, yeah. But then there's open API or OpenAI, which is the same paid API business model as Anthropic and run by Sam Altman, who we constantly drag through the mud and like love to hate him. I love, I love to hate him. Right? Everybody loves
We
him.
bash him. We bash him.
We
I'm not gonna
bash him
lie.
constantly, but we beat up on him constantly. So this is why you could like it kind of catches me off guard, right? It's the only signature on the letter that I can't justify with like a line item, right? Like their whole thing is their closed model, right? They benefit nothing from this, from signing this letter, right? It actually goes against their own interests, and it's the only one. It's the only standout to me. So 49 names I can explain with data with a spreadsheet saying, of course they signed it. They're going to make more money if this like goes through. It's a feel good story. Oh, they love freedom. They want open competition. No, they want this because it benefits them at the end of the day. It gives them higher margins. But the last one, OpenAI, it actually catches me off guard. So I for 99% of people that signed, it's not about freedom. It's and even OpenAI, I don't believe it's about freedom. There's something that I don't know, right? There's like
I, I,
some reason he signed it that I don't know about. So I
I,
don't
I,
believe.
I have a conspiracy theory. Sorry, I'm going to explain it really fast, okay? But this is my
Okay.
conspiracy theory. It's clear to me that Dario from Anthropic is the Wario from the AI world, right? Like he is the evil one. We know he is the evil one. Everybody knows who is the evil one. The problem is there's no Mario. Okay,
Yeah.
there's no Mario, and I think Sam Altman is trying, if you want by accident, to take that position of being the Mario of the AI world. Because right now, because all of them were pretty much just Warriors, right? Pretty like literally,
Yeah.
like
Waluigi.
yeah, literally Warriors and Waluigi is going around. I think for the first time ever, Sam Altman is trying to project himself as the Mario of the AI world, as the decent, good one, for the first
I still
time.
don't believe it. I don't
And
believe
I
it.
think
He's
I
gonna
think
fix
this
it
is the
somehow.
the the, the marketing because I mean, I don't think he's doing this out of love. Okay, I think he's doing this out of like Anthropic will lose a lot of people, and we better want
Oh,
those people.
okay. Yeah. We gotta look like
Okay,
the good guy. Anthropic's evil,
exactly.
like
Uh
money
huh.
hungry. We love freedom. We love open. Yeah. I can see that.
Uh-huh.
I can see that.
Look, don't get me wrong. We can even fall to that. Like if Anthropic keeps going in this way, we will eventually cancel our
Yeah. I
subscription.
mean,
That's the
we've been talking
reality.
about it for a while.
Uh-huh. So we eventually will do that, you know. And to be fair, the better competition right now is OpenAI. So we'll probably fully migrate to that, right? So I think it's not obviously like selfless, right? You
Yeah.
know, or anything like
There's
that. You know,
yeah. He's scheming.
uh-huh.
You know. He's got
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
got
Uh-huh. So
ulterior motive.
that's my conspiracy theory. I think I'm probably right, but I can't say anything legally, you know. But you know what I mean. Okay, perfect. Well, that's the episode. You know, hope you enjoyed. My name is Oscar Gallo.
Matt Wozniak, thanks for tuning in.
See you in the next episode.